Hi, I'm Greg Dell here with attorney Rachel Alters, and we're going to talk about Sun Life disability appeals. And Rachel, I want to get into what you do for someone when they have a Sun Life disability appeal, because the person who's probably watching this video is either thinking they're going to get denied or they've been denied, and they're worried about what should I do? I got this letter and it says go ahead and appeal. Um, first thing I want you to address is why should they not rush their appeal, even though Sun Life may say, hey, just submit an appeal and someone else will look at it.
Right. Sun Life would actually love if their claimant submits just a letter saying, I'd like to appeal, I disagree with your denial, and leave it at that. Because then when the claimant gets to court, they don't have much to go and to win their case. So I always tell every claimant, it's very important to hire an attorney who specializes in ERISA to do your appeal, because you only get one chance. So your appeal is essentially your trial if you end up in court. So if you win the appeal, wonderful. If you don't win the appeal, you have to sue Sun Life in federal court because you only get one appeal, and whatever goes into that appeal process is all a judge will see. So I tell somebody, please don't rush it. If you need to take the full 180 days, if you hire an attorney and it takes 180 days, that's not a bad thing, because you need to put everything possible into the appeal to make sure that you have all of your updated medical records, any new doctor's opinions, any new testing, anything, if you're approved for Social Security disability, all of that needs to go into the appeal. And just writing a letter and asking them to reverse their decision 9 times out of 10 is not going to work.
Right, and a lot of people think that it's like a supervisor relationship in like a restaurant, or calling your credit card company, or calling your medical, not even your medical, just calling for a supervisor who's supposed to be like this customer-friendly person is just going to make it right. And it's not like that. It's a totally different person that's going to look at it, and it's basically like starting over from scratch. And I really, really want people to understand that it is so important to put in a strong appeal, because if you finish your appeal and they make their decision, and the next day, God forbid, you have a horrific car accident that requires emergency surgery, where there's no doubt that you could go to work, that evidence doesn't come in, never comes in. It's not like, oh, I'll hire a lawyer later and you'll make it better for me. We can't bring anything in. The law simply doesn't allow it. It's whatever happened before this date, that's it. Nothing else comes in. So that's got to be understood. The next step is the person says, okay, I've been denied. You get the denial letter, and then you get what's called the claim file. Explain what the claim file is and how it becomes the foundation of everything that you're going to argue to submit a strong appeal.
So the claim file is everything that the insurance carrier has collected during the claim process. So whether a person's been on claim for 3 years, 10 years, or maybe got denied at the get-go, everything that the insurance carrier reviewed in order to determine whether that claim was going to get approved is in that claim file. So it's going to be the SOAP notes of the claim, the adjuster, everything that they discussed with you over the phone, emails back and forth, medical records, peer review reports, all of that's in there. So the first thing we do when we get an appeal, when we're trying to represent a client and prepare for an appeal, was we request that claim file. And it can be 500 pages, it can be 10,000 pages, but we review it very carefully so that we can rebut everything that the insurance carrier claims that the insured has not done to prove their claim. So that is a very important thing. It's the most important thing to do, is to get that claim file and review it.
Okay, so when you review it, there's certain things that you're specifically looking for. Specifically, I know that you're going in there looking initially for the medical reviews that have been done by Sun Life. Why are those so critical for you to review?
The way in which Sun Life usually denies claims is they don't normally send a claimant for an independent medical evaluation. They don't have them looked at by doctors. They have their hired doctors do a paper review of the claimant's records. So what that is they just pay somebody, whatever it may be, to review someone's records and render an opinion as to whether they believe they're disabled, and which is 9 times out of 10 in opposition to the claimant's treating physician opinion. So if a claimant has 5 doctors that are treating them for years saying, listen, my patient can't work, Sun Life can hire one doctor to review medical records, cherry pick whatever benefits them, look at certain records and ignore others, and write a report saying, we think that this claimant has no restrictions and limitations, and we believe that they can work full-time. And this happens all the time.
All right, so you get that report. Now you have an understanding of what Sun Life's knowledge is of this particular claimant, because Sun Life allegedly, in relying on this independent or employed, I call them independent, but it's their medical reviewer. It's usually their employee or their nurse has supposedly reviewed all the medical records and rendered an opinion to say, this is what I think. So where do you go from there then in putting together what is the heart and soul of your entire appeal?
What we normally do, we can do one of two ways. We can have the claimant's treating physicians work with us to help refute the peer review report, which is often what happens is, if you have a supportive physician who believes that, you can't work, they're usually willing to work with us. We prepare a very lengthy attending physician statement with specific questions geared towards this particular client's disability. And then we'll send the peer review report to the doctor, and we'll get on the phone and have a conference with that doctor and discuss how it is that they can refute this. They could either, put it in their own words in a letter, fill out our attending physician's statement, but they usually are very angry about Sun Life's disagreement with their professional opinion. They're, these doctors are saying, I've treated this patient, I've had this patient in my office multiple times, I know what they're capable of, yet somebody who just reviews medical records can disagree with my opinion. They get mad, and I like when the doctors are mad, because then they're willing to write letters and refute this, and usually it helps us win the appeal.
I know the other thing that you do in many of your cases is you may say, look, what kind of other testing can I get for a claimant? And of course, depending upon what they have, there could be some objective medical testing that hasn't been done, which is something with an MRI, a CT scan, maybe a nerve conduction study test, maybe a blood test. Whatever test might be available for that medical condition, we know what it is. The doctor may not have requested it because the doctor treats the patient, not the chart. And if you're going in there telling the doctor, I have this pain or this fatigue or whatever it may be, and the doctor feels like, okay, let's try to manage it and knows how, then the doctor doesn't need objective testing to tell him or her what they already know. But beyond that kind of obvious testing that we can recommend from our experience of handling like every single type of medical condition, you sometimes send a claimant for what's called a functional capacity exam. What is that, and why do you do that in some of your cases?
A lot of the times when the insurance carrier is denying a claim because a person fails to have objective proof that they, for example, can't sit for extended periods of time or can't type on a computer for extended periods of time if they have a back issue, a neck issue, some sort of physical issue. Sometimes it's also hard to document pain. Pain is subjective. So we'll send them for a functional capacity evaluation. It's with a physical therapist, and it's normally a 3-hour test, and they test how long you can sit, stand, push, pull, bend, stoop, climb. It's all the physical things that a job may require throughout a day. And then after that, they write a report and they render an opinion as to whether you could do, depending what your job was. If you were a nurse, can you do medium duty work? If you were, sitting at a desk all day, are you capable of sedentary work? And a lot of times those functional capacity reports help us, provide objective proof, further objective proof that the claimant cannot work in their position.
And then also, I know you'll take all of that's on the medical side, and then I know you'll also work on the vocational side, because the definition of what the occupation is important. And often we find that these claims are denied when there's a change of definition. And that changes when it goes from own occupation to any occupation, which means that they have experience, education, or training for. And a lot of times with Sun Life, they may say, we're looking at how your job is done in the national economy, which means it's not how your job was performed for that particular employer, because you may have a job that in the national economy requires just sitting for most of the day.
Sure.
But the way you did it for your job, you had to carry a 25-pound box every 15 minutes. And Sun Life will say, well, that doesn't matter. It's not the way it was done in the national economy. So we often get into this situation of where we're saying you have the occupation wrong. And a claimant will say that's just not how the job is done. No matter what they think, it's not right. And so we'll work with a vocational expert to talk about what that is. So clearly the occupation is super important, getting the medical is super important. But then you bring it all together. And at this point, I always tell my clients that this work that we've done to this point is really 80% of the appeal. Very hard to get to all of that point, and then you're going to write. But there's a special way in which you write an appeal. And why is that something that a claimant who's never been involved in litigation or a lawsuit or doesn't practice in this world could never prepare an appeal in the manner that you have the ability to as a lawyer?
Well, in doing this for many, many years, we know what the insurance carrier is looking for. we know what they base their denials on and what their peer review doctors are looking to see. So we kind of gather all that information up, between the claim file, the functional capacity evaluations, if we send them for a neuropsych eval, using the doctors as our experts, writing reports, all of that. And then we put it together in an appeal, which, can be, 20 to 100 pages long, depending on, how complex the person's medical condition is. So we put it together in such a way where we know that Sun Life most likely cannot turn that down. They must overturn. And if for some reason, our appeal, we think it's going to get overturned, but it doesn't, we know that if we end up in court, that a judge is going to rule in our favor. So we know what goes into it. We know exactly what Sun Life looks for. And, somebody who doesn't know that isn't going to know how to phrase and prepare an appeal, what goes into it, how it needs to be laid out, whether case law needs to go in there. All of those things need to be taken into consideration because, like we discussed earlier today, you get one shot at this. And, you can't call a lawyer and say, oh no, I submitted the appeal, I got the final decision. Can you help me? I didn't put any of this stuff in, because we can't. Our hands are tied. So it's important to go with an ERISA attorney who specializes in this and has been doing it for years like we have.
Well, I want to thank you for that summary. And what I want to do is I want to encourage claimants that if you've been denied, take a deep breath. You stumbled upon our video, you're in the right track. You found a law firm that only does this kind of work and has handled thousands of claims in the disability insurance world and hundreds against Sun Life. So we encourage you to send us your denial letter. We'll immediately review it. We'll set you for a free phone consultation. No matter where you live in the country, we're available to assist you. And most importantly, we're never going to charge you any fees or costs unless we're able to recover benefits for you. So we look forward to the opportunity to speak with you.